He's been picked out. Socks down to his ankle. Picks out Stansfield. That's the hat-trick. And that's what dreams are made of.
Hello and welcome to Park Life, the official Exeter City podcast. What a week it has been. 2 fantastic performances against Bolton and Shrewsbury. 5 goals scored and a clean sheet to match. So much positivity ahead of Saturday's match against Burton, so let's dive straight into it. Coming up in today's show, I'm joined by City commentator Nalo Mara, who breaks down the positives from both performances and also looks ahead to Burton on Saturday. Sonny Cox also joins the show to talk about how he's feeling after bagging a brace against Bolton. Finally, Burton fan and EFL expert Ed Walker joins me to chat all things Brewers ahead of Saturday's match at the Park. First up, I'm joined by commentator Nalo Mara for his Park Life debut. Niall, welcome to Park Life. Thanks so much for coming on. I've been meaning to get you on the pod for a while now, so I'm glad that we can finally get it done. We've got 2 great games to get through, but as always, we'll start with the first, sort of resist that urge to go for Shrewsbury straight away, and we will give that plenty of time. But let's start with Bolton, a game of 2 halves. We weren't at the top of our game in the first 45, but that second half performance was just excellent.
You know, the first half, we went into that game slightly cautious of a strong Bolton side and a lot of sort of fans in and around the stadium. I heard a lot of the echoes of the November fixture, which we won't discuss. But watching the first half, I thought, right, okay, it was a dominant Bolton performance, is what I really think from what we saw up in the press box. I remember going down to sort of get my refreshment at half time and Bolton fans sort of pulling me over saying they want 4, they want 5. I thought, well, you know what? The way that first half ended, Bolton had an array of chances and a lack of Exeter going forward. I thought, could this be a bit of an embarrassing result at the Park? But then we come out in the second 45. I'd only just hit record, so I thought I'm going to miss the big moment. And within, 10, 15 seconds, Sweeney launches the ball forward, and then Sonny Cox, obviously celebrating that new contract extension, just launches it over the keeper. And what a start to the second half it was on Saturday. And then things just got better in the 49th minute with Cox again, just showing what a talent he is. And I think throughout the season, we've seen glimpses of Sonny Cox really come into himself. But I think on Saturday, we've seen a few big strikers come down to SJP in the last few weeks. We think of Lyle Taylor came down, and then we saw, Collins as well only a couple of weeks ago. Sonny Cox was showing, carrying the way he's playing, he could be one of those big, forwards to mess with in the division. So, yeah. And of course, it was Exeter looked the dominant side for the later part of the second half, but conceding in the dying moments of nearly the end towards the full 90 was, of course, not the end City fans wanted, but a promising performance.
Yeah, absolutely, and we'll come on to that. But let's just stick on Sonny Cox for a bit longer, because we need to sing his praises, and we've got him on the podcast coming up a little bit later. The 2 fantastic strikes, of course, but a brilliant all-round performance as well, which maybe went under the radar a little.
Oh, yeah, massively. I think, and just the link up we saw with Harris and Aitchison as well, you're really starting to see that triangle really come together, which is exciting, I think, for fans to see. But I thought all round, his pressure on that experienced Bolton back line was just relentless. Some of these players who were at Wembley last year, and obviously we should say, did beat Argyle in the Papa John Trophy. Of course, it's now a slightly different name to the tournament. So it's a very experienced back line, and Sonny Cox was causing a lot of pressure. Then they were very comfortable playing the ball around the back in the first sort of 10 or 15 or so, but then sort of started to resort to going slightly longer because they knew that pressure was coming from either Sonny Cox or Aitchison or Harris. So I think Sonny Cox, it was a marvellous performance from him. I think, like you said, all round the pressure was good, and just sort of dropping into these deeper spaces to unlock pockets of space, whether that be for Harris, Aitchison, whoever's getting involved. And then I just, that with that finish, the first finish, just to have the eye and to be so switched on straight away, to see the keeper coming off his line, which he was doing for a lot of the first half anyway, playing sort of, he was quite almost confident coming out, corner be coming in for Bolton, he'd be sitting on his halfway line. So Sonny Cox clearly having the eye to see what's going on, even those parts of the game. and punishing him straight away in the second half. So like you said, Tom, an all-round fantastic performance from Sonny Cox.
Yeah, I think he's added that positioning aspect to his game, which maybe he lacked a little at the start of the season. That Yeovil spell clearly worked wonders because he's just developed that nous for being a proper striker now, and you can see it in his goal return at the moment. Look, I mean, I can hear it in your voice. I can definitely feel it in mine. I've seen a few fans getting very excited about the player that he could become. You know, he's still only 19, but what a player he is. We have got to be careful that we don't get ahead of ourselves, but he does look like another gem that's come out of the academy.
I totally agree with you. And, 19 years of age now. And we spoke about it briefly on Saturday. It's about the players who he's surrounding himself with as well, which I think Exeter is starting to get quite a good mix. So you think like the likes of Tom Carroll, of course, sitting in that midfield role, been sort of quite pivotal for Exeter this season. The experience he'll bring for Sonny Cox, obviously playing in the top flight for a long period of time, at Spurs. So he really has played a high level of football. I think you're sort of seeing Purrington as well, the addition in January, an experienced sort of defender in the window there. So I think if he continues to surround himself and get the minutes, because we've spoken about it before, just minutes at this stage in his career is what it's all about, because he'll grow into himself. And like you spoke about his positioning, that will only come with time, and Caldwell's experience, in youth systems before his time at Exeter can really support that. So, yeah, I think Sonny Cox, look, as football fans, you've got to get excited. These youngsters are what it's all about. So, like I said, got a really good group of lads behind him. And I think for Exeter now, the remainder of the season, if they can really push on, which we'll talk about, I think for Sonny Cox's confidence, that will be massive.
Yeah, absolutely. We can't help ourselves, can we, to get a little bit excited about what Sonny is now and what he could become in the future. I've seen a few comparing him to Ollie Watkins, and I say, slow down. He's let's give him a bit of space. But okay, you mentioned it a little bit earlier. We did only draw the game. It was a great draw, in my opinion. A really good point. But we do have to caveat it by saying that Owen Toll's 87th minute equaliser meant the points were shared. Overall, I think I know your answer to this, but did you consider it 1 point gained or 2 dropped?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, look, half time, I think a draw, any Exeter City fan would have bitten your hand off for it. But the dominant performance that we saw from Exeter City in the sort of, especially the first half an hour of that second half, you just thought Bolton are lucky not to be 3 or 4, but the goals not to really tally up. Look, I think we've got to think of a bigger picture here for Exeter City, and a point it is huge. And I think the fact we're even having this conversation of 2 points dropped against Bolton, who, let's face it, are definitely going to be in and around there. It's a very tight promotion race, but they're very much involved in it. So I'm going to be slightly pessimistic. No, come on, no. It's a good point. It's a good point for Exeter City, and I think the performance we saw on Wednesday, it clearly worked wonders for morale in the changing room.
Yeah, and Gary said that it would only be a good point if we followed it up with 3 on Tuesday, and that is exactly what we did. What a performance. Okay, yes, the early sending off helped, but we looked outstanding against Shrewsbury.
I totally agree, and of course, we've got to talk about the red card happening very early on in the game, but you've seen it time and time again in football. An early red can really destabilise the opposition because the shape of Shrewsbury will change. So what Calder will have expected before the game, that game plan's gone because it's a completely different Shrewsbury side now. The shape is changing. And how do you, work with that? Shrewsbury in a very similar position in the table to Exeter. So it was a tough matchup anyway. But Exeter City really punished them and utilised that extra man. So what a performance and a very dominant first half. But the one thing I really want to pick out is in that second phase. Now, I'm sure we'll talk about the goals, but keeping that clean sheet in the second half, because we have seen throughout the season a few defensive errors and, conceding from set pieces and stuff like that, which is natural in football. But of course, as a fan, you want to see that ruled out as much as possible. So keeping the clean sheet in the second half, I think it's a massive bonus again going into Burton this weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll come on to talk about some of the key players in that defensive performance as well. Because, you look at the 3 goals, but the clean sheet was just as important in winning that game, of course. Our joint biggest win of the season, you have to go all the way back to the opening day of the season against Wycombe Wanderers, where we last won by 3 goals. For a side that have struggled to find the net this season, if we're being honest, how important do you think that is for the confidence now that we've scored 5 goals in the last 2 games?
I think that's absolutely huge. And, I remember talking to people in January saying, getting in these extra attacking options to strengthen, of course, and Sonny Cox returning and now being the player that he is so far in the second half of the season. I think it's massive. But I think as well, it's the desire to score goals. It was the first, second, and third. You think of scoring those goals, 40, Harris scoring at the 41st minute, again, Aitchison in the stoppage time of the first half. It's this desire for goals. Of course, I think the keeper saved the second one, and Harris is there on the follow-up. It's this Kudos installing this desire to really be aggressive in the opposition's final third, which we didn't see a lot of the times. The start of the season, it was quite passive, and it was, teams allowing to just sort of break through the midfield and then cause the Exeter City backline a lot of problems. So I think confidence massively, but it's just this hunger I'm seeing. I mean, it really showed. Not many teams come out within the first 15 seconds on Saturday and score. It's unheard of. Everyone around us was in shock. The Bolton fans were sort of hands in head sort of thing. So like I said, confidence through the roof. But I've got to say, from Youngster Harris, the desire to get in those dangerous areas and pick up a goal, I'm very happy for him. I think that's huge for him as well.
Yeah, for sure. And we'll dive into each of those goals then. The opener, of course, Will Aimson, a real cheeky one, but yeah. I think he certainly deserved it, didn't he? If we're being honest, he's had a difficult season, the difficulties with the captaincy and then spending a lot of the season on the bench as well, as Cheick Diabate's performances earned him a place in the starting 11. But Will's come back. Yes, he's come back from a difficult period, but what a performance on Saturday as well as on Tuesday. And then to get on the score sheet on Tuesday, plus the defensive performance that he put in, I think it's just wonderful to see, isn't it?
I totally agree. And you know what, when he went down, I'm not sure if it was cramp or whatever, it forced him to come off on Saturday. I was gutted for him because what a performance he'd put in. And I think it did destabilise Exeter slightly on Saturday. And I think, dare I say, if he stayed on, I think that perhaps we wouldn't have seen that late equaliser for Bolton. But of course, we'll never know. But a goal very much deserved. Seeing him play over the last week, really confident on the ball as well. Because we know Exeter City, a lot of the time it is playing out from the back centre. Salo very confident on the ball. And I've got to say, parts of his foot, he did a cheeky sort of like almost Cruyff turn-esque on the weekend, which I quite enjoyed. So Aimson, a really great performance and a goal that you don't expect him to score. Quite frankly, and again a goal from set piece as well, which is so important for Exeter, because we've seen many a time on the weekends when in corner in front of the big bank, that's the moment you've got to really capitalize on it. Think you can get a winner there, the stadium's erupted, and when it's bouncing, it very much is a hard place to be. So Aimson very much deserved a strong defensive performance and a goal for him, which I'm sure he'll be very happy about.
And you waxed lyrical about Luke Harris a little bit earlier. Let's continue on that, because his first goal in professional football, or at least in senior football, second time of asking after his initial shot. When he signed, he told us he was a goal scorer. And it might have taken him a little longer than he would have liked, but to finally get that goal, you could see how delighted he was.
Oh yeah, and rightfully so. And I think it's a big thing coming to Exeter, like we spoke about before, it's minutes and experience. And just from seeing him from signing, I think it might have been Sonny Cox's second on the week. I'm not sure if he got the flick on for it, but you're still very much seeing the link up there. So for him, the goal, I totally believe, and I'm feeling very optimistic. The goals are very much coming for Harris, and they'll be very much deserved. An exciting player, really gives the backline a handful, and just. I've seen quite a few times, when Exeter were clear that he's really sort of good at picking up the ball in deeper areas. And because he's so difficult to get the ball off, that's what drives a lot of City's attacks forward. So Harris, a really young, exciting talent. And another one we might be saying, in 4 or 5 years' time, saw him down at SJP only a couple of years ago. So, but that's what it's about utilising the loan market. And, we've seen a lot of the clubs do it. So it's about, how do you use the loan markets in, Championship, League One to really support your club and the future careers of very exciting players like Harris, which I'm sure he will be.
Yeah, it's a really good point, and I think City have utilised the loan market excellently this year. If you consider, Sinisalo coming in on loan from Aston Villa, Ryan Trevitt, who had a great start to the season, although he has obviously had to go back to Brentford. Staying on midfielders, Jack Aitchison with a great strike, which went the right side of the post this time. But he wasn't the only City midfielder to catch the eye, as well as Harris, of course. Ryan Woods, a player that came in January and has been fantastic ever since he arrived. A real dictator on the night, and was one of the big reasons why we won the game and won it with 76% possession as well.
Yeah, you've got to talk about that possession stats as well. Just such a dominant performance from Exeter City. But with Woods, I saw him on the weekend, and I was just his the aggression on and off the ball. He's a horrible player to sort of be around because you just know he's going to win that ball off you and cause issues. So I thought a really strong performance, and rightfully so brought up. A lot of the time we don't mention those key pivotal sort of central midfielder roles, which Woods plays really well. And ultimately he's part of that dynamic of how do we transition out of defensive phase. And a lot of time we're seeing in the leagues is counter-attacking football, which works so well with the link up of the likes of H and Harris and Cox, that triangle three, but doesn't work without Woods really creating and connecting the play. So, and pivotal in defensive moments. So really impressed by him, and I think he'll be key for a strong performance on the weekend.
Yeah, and let's move on to the weekend now. Two great performances that will hopefully sort of provide that springboard for a good performance on Saturday. Burton Albion are the side that visit the park. Is it just a case of repeating the performances of the last two games?
I definitely think there'll be an energy going into these next few games, which City need to keep up. But it's a Burton side, of course, only narrowly losing to Portsmouth last night. Portsmouth, who've been, at the top of the table, arguably the best team in the league this season. So it's a game where it's got to be approached with a level of caution, because it's a really good run of games, so far. But an intense period, 3 games pretty much in the space of a week is never easy for any side. So I think the aggression and the belief, especially from last night, has to be there at SJP, and fans will be itching for a win. It's but prior to Bolton, it was 1 win in 5, so now they'll want SJP to get rocking again, and they thought they were on to 3 points on the weekend. So I think maintaining the sort of pressure we're seeing, but the belief that's now installed in the players from results, Caldwell, is got to be important for getting on the score sheet on Saturday, because it's a game that's really got to be won. And for Bolton, it's a huge game as well. Still, I wouldn't say comfortably safe. Obviously, Cheltenham in 21st on 34 points, with that game in hand on Burton. So it's a game they know they've got to win. And for Exeter City, it's just about sort of thinking, how high can they finish in this table now? I'm optimistic. I think very much that's 10 points clear now from Cheltenham in 21st. I'm looking up. I'm not down. So again, a big game for both sides, for Exeter City to really, start to, as we look towards the end of the season, finish strong and in a good position, considering a tough sort of winter period. But for Burton, they'll want to stay in this division, so 3 points is massive.
Yeah, and do you think we can get those 3 points? Are you confident?
Of course. You've got when you're on the form you're on, and you see it across the football leagues. It's not so much in the Prem, but I think, I suppose this year as well, it's how teams just rise up in a couple of weeks. Like I said, I don't think we're not looking at, I'm not saying playoffs, but I'm saying, mid-table, can Exeter City establish themselves as a League One club? And then it's about, okay, 2 really positive seasons in League One. We've had the joy of the earlier cup run at the start of the year. Let's look at this season. Okay, it's been fairly positive. How do we go into next year now, knowing we are a League One club? We're established ourselves as that. But why don't we just keep looking up? So I'm very positive. I think 3 points are coming Exeter City's way, and I look forward to being there on Saturday.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't wait. It's going to be a great game, and hopefully we can take all those 3 points. Noel, thank you so much for joining me on Park Life this week. It's been an absolute pleasure to hear your opinions.
Yeah, thank you very much, Tom. Really enjoyed it.
Next, I'm joined by City striker Sonny Cox, who, it's fair to say, has made quite the impression over the last few weeks. Sonny, welcome to Park Life. Thanks so much for joining us. 2024 has been quite the year for you so far, plus that last week of 2023, of course. After that short spell with Yeovil over the winter, you've come back and looked a completely different player. Just talk to me a little bit about, I suppose, just how you're feeling after such a brilliant few months.
Well, I mean, obviously it's amazing. Like, I mean, my aim at the start of the season was to obviously play for the first team, like it is every season. And for like pre-season, it started off quite well, and we had a really good start to the season, top of the league for quite a few weeks and stuff. But I feel like at the start of the season, my performances still weren't like, I wasn't really showing what I can do. And I feel like the best thing for me was the loan to Yeovil, and that helped me so much. Even though at the time, like, I went from obviously starting in League One and then getting told I was going out on loan. That was a bit. I had to speak to a few people about that one, just to like for them to tell me like how it's gonna help me and stuff. Because obviously when I was playing, I thought obviously my performances, I didn't feel like I was making that much of an impact. But then I realised how much it could help me getting just game time, playing more men's football. Even though I've been to that league before, a lot of coaches were telling me how it helped me a lot. So I trusted them, and then obviously went to Yeovil. Was doing quite well. I feel like when I was there, I didn't really realise much was changing, but I guess in a team that's winning pretty much every week, it obviously changes your mindset. And when I was gone, obviously we were having a bit of a hard time back at Exeter, and I was still going in, seeing the lads and that a few days a week, but not that much. But in the end, I scored like 2 goals for Yeovil and got a few assists. And then when Gary called me and told me I was being recalled, I was buzzing. I was so happy.
Yeah.
And then obviously came back. I changed my mindset completely when I came back. I thought I'm just gonna show the fans what I can do and commit to 100% to everything. And obviously I feel like that helped a lot. The first 2 games when I came off the bench, I just sprinted around, done as much running as I could, and then got my first start against Wickham, and then scored the goal to win that game, and ever since been scoring a few goals. So yeah, it's been good.
It's been half decent, hasn't it? It's not been too bad at all.
No, not too bad.
Well, you mentioned the loan spell at Yeovil, and I've got to talk a little bit more about it, because you said just then that you maybe needed a bit of convincing to go there. I think even last season we saw some glimpses of quality from you. That goal against Oxford, for example, I know it came in a defeat, but you looked really lively that game, and we saw quite a lot of it over some periods. I think you've kind of admitted that your levels weren't quite as consistent as you might have liked. There must have been something that happened at Yeovil. What exactly was it? Because you came back such a different player, a stronger player, more positionally aware, just a more clinical striker. There must have been something that just completely changed you, right?
I feel like the main thing is confidence. Like, I feel with every single player, when you're low on confidence, when you're like sort of doubting yourself, you're never going to be able to perform 100%. And after the Yeovil, I think Yeovil made me realise, like, I went to there was a few games that I played at Yeovil, and like my performances there weren't like up to scratch either. And I remember them games, and after them games, I just thought, I've got to do something to show. It's just like something clicked in my mind, which made me think about everything differently and in like a more positive way. And then I got the 2 goals for Yeovil, and that made me realise that like I can actually, well, I can score goals. Like, that's what I've always done as a kid, and I feel like that brought my confidence back, and got a run of games together, and then was like doing things. Where I was trying things on the pitch that I wouldn't normally try at the start of the season in Exeter, because I would be like, I wouldn't be as confident, so I'd be like, I wouldn't be scared, but like worried about. I'd be thinking more like what if I lose it? Then what am I going to do with the ball? So it's just a little change in mindset. I feel like that's what helped me. And now all the time I'm thinking, oh, how am I going to get into a position to score? And obviously the first 3 goals were all me getting into positions, 2 off Jack's shots, and then 1 off a cross. And I was just thinking, where do I need to be? Where's the ball going to land to be in the best position to score? And it sounds so like simple, but it was just a massive thing in my head. It was like a block that I had. I just got it out of the way, and I feel like that brought my confidence back, and now I'm back. It feels like
exactly.
yeah.
That's exactly it. The positional awareness is something that I think is really key, because I think with any top level striker, they know where to be. They know that they've got to be in the 6-yard box to follow up, and that's what you've been doing, for example. Is that something that you kind of had to be told, or was it something that came quite naturally? Because I know Gary talks a lot about it.
I feel like obviously everything that Gary tells me helps, like I take it into mind and that. But ever since I was a kid, I've always been like scoring goals, and I feel like the more games you play, the more situations happen, and the more you can predict where the ball's gonna come. Like sometimes with like crosses, when you're playing with new players, let's say that you haven't played with before, for example, you don't know exactly where the ball's going to come in, how they're going to play. But then when you've played with a load of different players, you sort of know like what the most likely ball's going to be into the box. So where you've got to run, and if it does get blocked, if it gets deflected or something, if the keeper saves it, if it's a shot, you sort of, because you've been in that situation so many times, it's experience basically. Like obviously you see with Mo, in training and that, he knows exactly where to be every single time, and I'm sure he'll score a few more goals this season, definitely, because he's got that through experience and stuff. And then yeah, like I feel like with the best strikers, like you see Haaland and that scoring loads of goals, a lot of his goals are just being in the right place at the right time, just because it comes natural to him. So I feel like, yeah, like experience helps a lot, and predicting where the ball's going to be, that's where you get, because you'll get at least 5 goals a season of just tap-ins.
Yeah,
I reckon. So
no, for sure.
yeah.
I mean, I spoke to Demi Mitchell earlier this season, and you know, I know that he said before that I suppose has been inspired. He studies the likes of Neymar and Hazard. You mentioned Haaland there. Is there a player that you sort of look at for inspiration, try and copy, or do you like to consider yourself your own kind of player, I guess?
Well, I'm quite a big Liverpool fan, so I watch every single Liverpool game. They're playing at the minute as well, and I watch every Liverpool game all the time. I watch like Jota, who scores loads of goals, and like try and learn off him. But I think the main one is probably Haaland, that I like watching his movement, like all of his positioning, like even like little tricks that he does. For example, I think one game, I can't remember what it was, he would like change his run, but like nudge the defender just to put him off, and then run round him. And then it's just like just tiny things like that. I try and like get tips off them.
Yeah.
And I do a lot of clips like after training and that with one of the under-21s coach, Nicky Jose, and he obviously he used to be a striker as well, and he shows me a lot of clips on Haaland, and you don't notice them if you're just watching the game, but then if you proper look into them, it's really clever how some of the strikers, like, they find a way to gain the edge over a centre half, and that's another reason why they get all their goals, I guess.
Oh, absolutely. I suppose, I mean, we're talking about the Premier League, and there's a decent little transition here, because you've obviously signed your new contract until 2026, which you must have been delighted about, I'm sure. But if you go back to the last contract you signed at City as a scholar a couple of seasons back, I think I'm right in saying that you went on trial with Manchester United. Is that correct?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that you obviously attracted a lot of interest after winning the Floodlit Cup, but your decision to stay at City was maybe a surprising one. I'm not too sure, but it certainly paid off. What was it that made you want to stay at the club rather than, I suppose, take an offer from up in the Premier League?
I feel like, obviously, because I live down here, is one of the reasons. I'm still with my family, all my friends from school and stuff. That's a reason. Another reason, probably when you see the likes of what Ollie Watkins has done, and like he went through the first team. He went out on loan to Western-super-Mare, which I also did. And then he had a few seasons in the first team, scored a load of goals, then got his move after. And like, I feel like if I did go to, let's say, a Premier League team, I definitely wouldn't have, like, I think I've played just over 50 games for Exeter now. I definitely wouldn't have that much men's experience. And at the end of the day, football's a game. It's not like under 21s football at a Premier League club I can guarantee it's completely different to, let's say, like League One, League Two, and even the loan teams that I've been to, like playing against men, it's completely different, and that's the end goal. So playing against them as soon as you can, really, I feel is the best way. It obviously varies for other people, but that's one of the main reasons why I stayed at Exeter.
Yeah, and it was a good decision, wasn't it? Let's talk. I mean, I suppose you got a bit of a new contract bounce after signing it. That Bolton game, wow. I mean, a game of two halves in many ways. We didn't look at the races at all in the first half, but came out firing in the second 45. You scored off an absolute worldie after just a few seconds. Just talk to me a little bit about what the team talk was like, because, I mean, arguably looked at our best in that second half, and you came out firing, of course. What was said during that halftime team talk?
Well, before the game, the gaffer set us up in our shape, and well, we had gone through it in training the whole week, and he set us up in our shape and like told us like how we got to defend them, how we attack and stuff. And I feel like we'd done it, but probably at like 60-70%. We weren't like fully committed. I don't know why that was. It's I think the gaffer mentioned in one of his interviews that there was a disagreement between some people. Someone wanted to change it. He didn't. So he told us at halftime, gave us a stern talking to, and told us to just commit to everything you do. So, like I said earlier, like just give 100% in whatever you're going to do. And I guess the first action, Sweens gave 100% into the ball up to Ben. Ben jumped as high as he could, headed it down to me, and yeah, obviously I finished it off. But I feel like you'll never, as a team, if even one person's not given 100%, it has a massive effect, like it showed in the Bolton game. To be fair, we were lucky to be still in the game after the first half, because it wasn't a great performance at all. We were 1-0 down, luckily, and then yeah, I think we shocked them coming out after half time, and then went 2-1 up, and unluckily didn't hold on to the 3 points. But a point at Bolton is still not a bad result at all.
Well, certainly not a bad result at all. And, two great goals in front of the big bank for you. Scoring in front of the big bank is obviously, a dream come true for any Exeter City fan. And obviously you grew up during the youth system and made your way to the first team. Playing at St James Park must have been a dream growing up. So to score a couple in front of the big bank and two great goals as well, that must have been a brilliant feeling.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I remember when I used to go to watch Exeter games and that, because there was only a few players in the first team that I would actually I sort of knew. And I saw Jack Sparks score his first goal. I remember that for some reason that just pops into my mind, and I remember like how much it meant to him, and like how much it even meant to me watching in the crowd, because I knew him and he scored for Exeter. And I remember every goal, everyone used to like jump forward, fall over and stuff in the big bank. And yeah, it's like the best feeling ever when someone scored. And now that I'm actually doing it, it's mental to think. I used to after Exeter game, when I would go bed that night, I'd be thinking, one day I want to score in front of them and make everyone that happy as I was. So I'm so glad I've got there and now doing it. So yeah,
I was going to say you've done it, and you've done it a couple of times already, and well, I suppose a few more times before that as well. You kind of touched on it there. Obviously, you said that you're a Liverpool fan earlier in the pod, but clearly you went to watch Exeter games when you were growing up. How much of an Exeter fan were you? Were you standing on the big bank and joining in with the chants and stuff? What was it like?
Yeah, I used to go up with a few of my schoolmates to not every home game, as I would sometimes have training and games on Saturdays, but as many as I could go to, really. I remember going to both of the Liverpool games at St James's Park, both of the more recent ones. That 2-2 draw, I remember going to. I remember going to some big games. The playoff semi-final against Carlisle, I think it was,
Yep.
when was it Jack Stacey scored that goal?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah, I remember that one. Pitch invasion after. Got pictures with like Ethan Ampadu, Ollie Watkins after the game, and yeah. So I would always like look out for them. I wasn't at every single game, but like I used to go to as many as I could make it. So I was still quite a big Exeter fan. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. All right, we've got to bring it back to normal levels now, and talk about Saturday's game. Burton Albion visiting the park on Saturday. They're a side that have obviously got an awful lot to play for. Just below us in the league, definitely fighting to stay out of those relegation spots. Are you expecting a difficult fixture at the park?
Yeah, it's always difficult against teams like Burton because they want to battle. They do everything to win throw-ins, corners, free kicks up the pitch, so they can just stick it in the box and try and get on the end of it. But overall, I think we are definitely a better team than them, and I feel like it's obviously going to be a tough game. But if we play the way how we have done in the against Bolton second half, against Peterborough, even though we lost that game, I still think it was a very good performance. I feel like we definitely should get the 3 points, and then 3 points will be very, very important for us looking at the league table.
Yeah, absolutely. And are you confident you can grab another?
I do my best here in front of the big bank again. Seem to like scoring in front of the big bank more than the other end, so hopefully, yeah.
Yeah,
hopefully.
Well, unsurprising, isn't it? Sonny, thank you so much for joining us on Park Life this week. Your insight has been absolutely incredible, and I'm sure the fans will have absolutely loved that. Thank you so much for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you for having me.
Finally, Burton fan and EFL expert Ed Walker chats all things Brewers ahead of their visit to the park on Saturday. Ed, welcome to Park Life. Thanks so much for joining us. Before we get to the game on Saturday, I'd like to talk a little bit about Burton's season so far. You started the campaign with Dino Marmia, went on a 7-game unbeaten run, found yourselves as high as 9th in the league, but then you collapsed. Marmia got the boot. Martin Patterson has been appointed, but hasn't really managed to pick up the results that you need. What's the season felt like for Burton fans?
In a word, forgetful. I think it naturally is when you have a campaign like this. It's that little period in October, that really good purple patch of form that is essentially keeping the heads above water at the minute. And that purple patch under Dino was preceded by a really poor start and succeeded by, again, a really poor lack of wins that ultimately cost him his job in the early parts of December. There was then a month period that followed with an interim manager, Gary Mills, the first team coach. That was a decent points return, especially over the Christmas period, that's kept the head above water further. And then Martin Patterson in, who's had a very solid first month, but this second month has felt really below the standards. His down wins really hard to come by. People are a bit disappointed with the quality of the football and doesn't really feel like he's maximising the most out of the players. So we're left in this position with about 9 games left where we're feeling quite uncomfortable. I didn't really want to be sat here in the middle of March having to monitor and care about the bottom 4 teams' results, but ultimately, I think you have to when you're in this position.
Yeah, I think it's probably one of those situations that you didn't necessarily expect, especially going through that purple patch earlier in the season. In many ways, you're still kind of riding the wave of that 7-game unbeaten run. I guess you're still looking below you, aren't you, at those relegation positions, just trying to find a way of staying out of them, especially with the teams in the bottom 4, occasionally picking up those points. Cheltenham maybe not so much at the moment, but there's always that possibility.
Yeah, Cheltenham was the one I was steering for quite a while, especially before playing them at the start of March. And that was a 0-0 draw at Wharton Road where Burton was very close to winning at the end. Cheltenham cleared the ball off the line with an open goal, essentially, that was missed. So could have come away with 3 points in that situation and really got a very important result there. The frustrating thing is I think Burton are actually really close to getting it done. They got 39 points. You generally say 50 is the standard required for survival. I'd be inclined to think you actually maybe could get away with a little bit less this year, maybe 48, 49. So if they were able to pick 3 wins up in these final 9 games, wherever they're from, that would see them over the line. So you look at the last 2 games they've had, they've been quite tricky ones against Peterborough and Portsmouth, 2 of the top sides, competitive results, but ultimately still not picked up any points from them. So yourselves, Port Vale coming up. I think there's a replay with Cheltenham coming up. They've got the final 2 games of the season against Reading and Fleetwood, which I would really rather not have to go into the end of the season needing results from. Without sense, that'll be at that stage. But 3 more wins, equivalent to 9-10 points, I think we're there. We've just got to find them now in these final couple of months.
It's strange that you mentioned the points totals, because I've been trying to work it out for a little while and I still can't really find out what that golden number is. I mean, you look back a couple of seasons ago and Fleetwood survived on 40 points, and you also had Morecambe surviving on 42 that season. Yeah, you know, there have been teams that have been relegated on 50 points before. It's it can really vary, but I guess that's the magic of the EFL, right?
It is, yeah. That 40 points Fleetwood season was a bit of a fluke, because I remember up the opposite end, you needed 80 points to playoffs, which was an incredibly high standard. And you normally say kind of 70s put you in the mix there, but the standard that year was so high that it led to an exceptional top 6, top 7 or so, and then a really poor standard bottom 4 that Fleetwood managed to get away with, and Morecambe likewise. So I would think we're probably aiming more towards high 40s here as the margin needed. But again, that really comes down to the bottom 4 kind of improving in standard. I think Cheltenham have made themselves a lot more competitive under Darrell Clark. Fleetwood do actually look kind of all right now under Charlie Adams, so they could be one to watch. Carlisle have just got too much to do, quite frankly, and Port Vale are really low on confidence right now. So for ourselves, the Cambridge, the Shrewsbury, maybe even to yourselves, if we put you in a conversation to Reading, it's just a matter of keeping enough of the standards and just keeping an eye on those 4 down below that hopefully they can avoid picking up sufficient results to catch them.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And I guess we've got to look at some of your recent results as well, because you are definitely in that conversation of maybe falling into those bottom 4 places. It's certainly a possibility, isn't it? 2 defeats, albeit against 2 of the best teams in the league, Portsmouth and Peterborough, 2 great sides, of course, and you know they'll be challenging for promotion this season. But did you see anything positive in those 2 games that might give you a little bit of hope for Saturday?
Yeah, there were some little bits. Portsmouth was quite fortunate to only be 2-1. Really, Portsmouth were the dominant side throughout, as you expect, with them top of the league and doing so well. They got themselves back to 2-1, having been 2-0 down to a Cassini Youngie brace. Denied a penalty, which Martin Patterson, the manager, was pretty insistent was actually a foul on Bobby Camwell, but decision's not given. So they're ruining that a little bit ahead of this weekend. Peterborough was probably the one even more so where it feels a bit unjust to have that result they did. They were incredibly good in the game. Peterborough was just clinical. They were able to take the lead in the 88th minute, go 2-1 up, and then seal in 96 with just a bit of quality. Really, that game and another day could have gone either way. So you kind of ruin the missed opportunities in that Peterborough game especially. And now you look ahead at this game and then Port Vale the following weekend at home. It's a couple of fixtures where you think there is an opportunity against more competitive, winnable opposition.
Yeah, but I suppose Burton's biggest problem this season has been scoring goals. I mean, you know, just 31 this season, less than 1 a game, significantly less than 1 a game, and not a single one of your players has scored more than 4 league goals this season. Why is it that finding the back of the net has been so difficult for Burton this year?
I don't think they really played the kind of football that creates an exceptional amount of chances. They play what I'd probably call percentages football, which is very direct. It's a lot of focus on trying to win the flick on, win the first ball, collect the second ball that drops loose, and then create opportunities from there. It's back to front very quickly, essentially. They are a big set-piece threat team, try to utilise the throw-in that Tom Haber possesses, the wing-back, the in-swing deliveries that midfielders Mark Helm and Joe Powell provide from corners and free kicks. It doesn't create a lot for strikers who some of whom I don't really think we're best utilising. For instance, a young lad, Antoine Hackford, on loan from Sheffield United, his game just isn't being a focal point in this team. You just kind of want him to be let loose as a more expressive forward, and I just don't think, sadly, this is the right kind of loan deal for him, which won't contribute many goals. And the frustrations is that we've got a very temporary, lonely front line, young, inexperienced players making their first loan moves in the EFL, contributed here and there. Joe Hugel, Ademola, Ola Adebomi have contributed here and there, but Kyle Hudlin is again someone I'm not quite sure is actually the level to play for Burton in truth, despite his size. And the big frustration is that we had a guy in Beryl Labala who had a really good first half of the season, was the top scorer, still is the top active scorer in the team, albeit not at the club anymore. He's gone to Wickham, turned down the chance to extend a short-term deal, moved in January to Wickham where he's contributing there instead. So had to go again with a very temporary front line, and it's just contributing here and there, but not to a sufficiently prolific level, really.
I suppose let's move on to some of your players because, before the season began, there was a lot of talk about players leaving Exeter and joining Burton Albion, heading up to the Pirelli. You had 4 of our players that were with us last season. Jamal Blackman, Jake Caprice, Raheem Harper and Kegs Chowke. None of them seem to have set the world alight at Burton. What is your assessment of each of them?
I remember... I can't remember who posted it, but there was a black and yellow version of the Exeter badge that got posted after Caprice joined, because it felt like we were just essentially becoming like your like feeder team almost, just picking up all your players. That was quite fun. Yeah, bit of disappointment, I think, partly. I really enjoyed Exeter last season. I felt quite good about some of the signs that were being made. Blackman initially, right at the start of the season, was seen as the first choice goalkeeper, especially during pre-season, where he'd look a lot more convincing than Max Crocombe. Started the campaign not particularly setting the world light, making a couple of okay saves, but being in a losing team. He picked up an injury in the first half against Shrewsbury Town right in the middle of August, which meant Max Crocombe had to come on, and Max Crocombe's not looked back since. Crocombe is probably on for our player of the season at the moment. He has been really good in goal. Got himself in the New Zealand squad, playing for New Zealand. He'll be off with them in March, a bit later on down the line. So we'll miss him for the Port Vale game, which probably means Blackman's going to come back into that. So I kind of wonder with Blackman if he might move on. I don't think his ambition is to become a number 2 at the club, especially I think he only signed a 1-year deal anyway. So he might be someone that moves on. Caprice has featured a lot more. Truthfully, people are not very confident with him. I remember seeing him. I did both Exeter games last season. I particularly thought the Pirelli, Caprice was actually the best player in that Exeter team, caused a real problem as kind of an inverted left wing back trying to create a lot of opportunities. So I knew that was part of his game, but there's something really uncomfortable about him when the ball is near. You don't quite trust his positioning, sadly, and he's a bit of a scapegoat in this side, sadly, for some of the performances. I think people are always a lot more confident when Tom Aim is playing a right wing back ahead of him, so he's someone who has to really go and prove his worth back to people again. Harper is one of the positives the last couple of games, actually. Playing in midfield, he's looked really good. He hit the bar in the first minute at Portsmouth on Tuesday, smashed it out from range and came very close to scoring. Harper, again, I think is someone who's had a career with a lot of promise and never really felt like he's quite been able to hit it. His time at Birmingham, at West Brom, at Ipswich, not quite happened for him. I think it was a loan at Exeter, if I remember last year, doing sales from Ipswich, where he contributed here and there. I do find myself a little bit annoyed. I think he slows the game down a little bit too much. He's a bit insistent to take 2 touches rather than 1 sometimes, but if he keeps at the level he's been at the last couple of games, there might be some hope for him to grow a more established role in this team going forwards. And Kegs is a real shame because I don't know what's happened to him. It was at the start of pre-season where I really liked him, really tidy ball playing midfielder, sometimes being deployed a bit further forwards as kind of like 2 attacking midfielders behind a striker. And I thought this is a guy who could have a really bright future. I bought from Southampton. I know he's on loan from the Saints to you guys last year. We bought him and he was supposed to be part of one of these players that was part of the next breed of Burton players that come through in central midfield. And I don't know if he had a long period out, but there was a long period where he just wasn't making squads at all with no real explanation of why. And I think he's come back now to make his part in squads, but he just seems really low down the pecking order, which is a shame because I think there's a really tidy, nice doubler in there. And I'd really like to have seen a lot more of him this season than we have.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think, we saw some real bright sparks from him, particularly towards the tail end of last season. And I think it's a shame that he hasn't maybe been given that opportunity at Burton. I think that's probably fair to say. Let's move on to Saturday then. A big game for both sides, of course. But considering the position that Burton find themselves in, I think there's an argument that this is maybe a must-win for Burton. And I know we'll hear that phrase a lot towards the tail end of this season. But is that how you're thinking about it?
Nowhere near as must win as the following weekend, which is at home to Port Vale. Definitely. It's just a matter of picking up whatever results they can. I think I've said to you before, previously speaking, we kind of still a bit more confident about them on the road at the minute than we do at home. The Pirelli pitch is an absolute state at the minute. It's really deteriorated to a bad level. It seems to be reflecting the performance almost. I don't think they haven't won a home game, I don't think, since it could be January now since they last won a home game. They've had really disappointing defeats at home to Northampton, to Carlisle, beaten by Peterborough ultimately, and despite a competitive performance. So it's just a matter now kind of crawling away over the line, picking the results where they can. I'm firmly heading into this with the take a draw stage situation, partly because it's a long way down to Exeter and I don't enjoy travelling back up after defeats. I've done Devon trips before where it's ended in defeat and you're just still a bit rotten trying to make your way back up towards the end. I know you guys are going for a league double. It's quite weird to think about that game back in September and where you guys put yourselves after that 1-0 win, of course, and how things have kind of slipped a little bit since, and they've got back on track a little bit more, and the beliefs come back into Caldwell, which is quite nice because there was a point where that looked a pretty fractured relationship and a bit of concern about where we were going, but that does seem to recover, thankfully, so it should all be okay there. Yeah, firmly in the take a point stage. If we can pick up 3, that's fantastic. I kind of wonder, it's down to maybe he was a little bit more motivated. I was kind of wishing you hadn't got that 3-0 win at Shrewsbury at the weekend and you were a little bit more out of form heading into this because the mood's a bit higher now, so we'll see. I'll be truthfully, there is still a little bit more care for me about the following weekend against Port Vale, which is just an enormous one with the situation those two clubs are in. But if they can take something from this, that's going to be a big boost for them.
Ed, thank you so much for joining us on Park Life this week, and best of luck for the rest of the season.
Absolutely, Tom. Thank you very much.
That's all for this episode of Park Life, the official Exeter City podcast. Let us know what you want to hear more of via our social media channels, and don't forget to hit the follow button so you never miss an episode. Thanks for listening. Up the City.
He's been picked out. Socks down to his ankle. Picks out, stands